Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 11 of Code Geass R2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, there was the wedding that Lelouch crashed and kidnapped Tianzi and sort of led the Chinese Federation on a bit of a wild goose chase. And things seemed to be going well until he was essentially backed into a corner. You know, the Chinese sort of outwitted him to a degree, and essentially he's backed into a corner. So it's going to be a bit of a fight. And given that Lelouch is like hanging out in the student council room, I think it's fair to say that that's really Rolo. You know, because like Lelouch was clearly on the flagship, right? Or maybe this is like a flashback or something, or... I guess I assumed he would have a body double. You know, that's kind of a fair assumption, I would guess. So, I mean, I guess the idea here is that Lelouch is keeping up the pretense that he and Zero are not one and the same. Oh, okay, yeah. There we go. So... interesting, Sayako. I'm not sure if that character's cropped up before, but... you know, whoever she is, she's got some remarkable stealth capabilities for being able to mimic Lelouch so well. I mean, she does have, like, a facial prosthesis. But even so, you know, that's not nothing. That's pretty remarkable technology. So, back with Lelouch in reality, you know, it's not good. They're essentially cornered in a cave, and the Chinese Federation's sending bombers. You know, it's not good. Especially because Lelouch was sort of banking on Tianzi providing some form of insurance. You know, it occurred to me while the opening was playing that I'm fairly certain Kallen was also taken hostage too, so the situation is even more dire for Lelouch than I initially remembered it to be. You know, I mean, it really seems like the situation's dire all around. You know, the eunuchs are pretty clear that they're willing to just kill Tianzi if need be, which... you know, Jinqi, he doesn't want that to happen, but it's kind of not up to him at this point, seeing as how parts of the Chinese Federation are far more keen on siding with the Britannian Empire. And given that that's the case, they would have a common enemy in Lelouch, and they would simultaneously not really care about Tianzi and her well-being. So, yeah, I guess things are rather dire indeed, because I don't know if Lelouch and the Black Knights really have the capabilities to fight off the combined forces of the Chinese Federation and the Knights of the Round. You know, Jinqi might be an ally of convenience, but he's certainly not well disposed towards Lelouch after the stunt he pulled. So I guess at this point, like, the main concern is I'd imagine stopping the bombers, right? Because, there's not much you can do about that. They're sort of in an unfortunate position. And then I guess once they take care of that, then the question is, how do you handle the Knights of the Round and things like that? I mean, if C2's getting involved, that's interesting because she's got to have some sort of special machine of her own. Alright, so unfortunately for the Black Knights, things aren't going remarkably well. And I guess that is to be somewhat expected considering the Knights of the Round are essentially the best in their cohort. Ooh. So even as the Chinese Federation and the Britannian Empire work together, Schneizel, he already knows that, killing Tianzi would be a, not a faux pas, but it would cause an incident, and therefore, he's kind of got to let the Chinese make the last move here. Which, that's, it's very tactful, I guess, to not want to cause an incident even when things have already sort of hit the fan as they have. The question, I guess, is, how do you swing something like that without making it obvious? Because I feel like making it clear that that's what you're doing would have the opposite effect. Because the idea is you want to foist the blame on someone else while, not alienating an ally. So I do find it interesting that the Chinese Federation are sort of mocking Lelouch for his idealism, which, I mean, I guess maybe with their relatively few dealings with the Order of the Black Knights, they wouldn't understand this, that's just how he is. But at the same time, I think it sort of speaks to their just sheer rottenness that they would look down on idealism like that. It's already only a burden as it is in a war like this. So this is not good. Tianzi has decided to go outside where it's unsafe. Man. It makes sense that the Chinese would all just aim all guns at her, but that's dire. And Jinke, to his credit, is trying to shield her. I feel like this is going to end very poorly for one and or both of them. I mean, already I feel like the firepower is beginning to tell. So the only question is, who's going to take advantage of this situation? Because Jinke, I feel like with the whole build-up between the promise and storming the wedding and all that, he's basically as good as dead, narratively speaking. The question is, does Lelouch leverage this? I mean, it seems like he's sortieing himself, and he's got a brand new machine to do it in. So, that's something. That bodes well for the Black Knights, I guess. The only question is, why were they saving, this ace up their sleeve for so long? I feel like maybe the dire situation could have been avoided a little bit if, whatever this machine, they had deployed it a bit sooner. But then again, maybe it was Lelouch's strategy all along, make sure that Jinke is indisposed, force the Chinese Federation, the Britannians, to draw themselves forwards. Maybe not quite to the point of overextension, but to the point where you can just punish them harshly. Okay. So that's interesting. This nightmare frame is, highly defensive. And it seems like they sort of modified the Gawain. That would make sense, I suppose. But, boy, that's interesting, firing a laser through a prism like that. It's certainly highly effective, but there's still the Knights of the Round to worry about, and I feel like even if Lelouch were to fight them at full capacity, that's still like, what, 2-on-1 with Suzaku waiting in the wings? Wow. So at this point, I feel like Lelouch is laying it on a bit thick. Hey, Jinki, you've been betrayed. They're trying to kill the girl you want to save. Like, you should probably work with me. Maybe you should have stepped in a bit sooner, because the guy's nightmare frame is all but crippled at this point. So, he might have been a more effective ally had you intervened a bit earlier. I guess it probably is part of his plan that, the guy's not doing too well. That probably works to his advantage ultimately, because, if someone's gonna die, it would be him. But, if that weren't enough, it seems like there's rioting all over the Chinese Federation. And it simply feels like this can't be a coincidence, Oh, okay, so Lelouch has pulled that old gambit where you covertly record a message rather, and then you broadcast it. So, it seems like talking about how you're going to kill Tianzi was not a good idea, because, even if you don't care about her personally, she is essentially the symbol of the Federation, or like a figurehead, essentially. Alright, so that's very interesting, because it seems like he's, not quite crippled the Chinese Federation, but he's certainly complicated things. Okay, so that's interesting. They had a lot of reinforcements, as it turned out. It was all just like a multi-layered ploy. Ooh. So this is very interesting. C2, for some reason, is having some sort of a psychic episode with this Knight of the Round here. And the two of them... It's unclear why they would have such an episode at such a time. Like, I guess Anya might have known Lelouch when he was a kid, but I don't think that's been, explicitly stated before. I mean, I guess it might make sense, him being a Britannian prince and all that. Wow. So it really seems like a fairly flawless victory for Lelouch in the end, with the Knights of the Round retreating, the Britannians no longer seeking to make an alliance with the Chinese. Yeah, against all odds, he managed to turn things around pretty handily. So I guess the question is, what happens next? Like, obviously Jinki's not gonna let these guys live, right? There we go. Nice and brutal. And frankly, it's what they deserve. Ooh. So the Chinese captured Kalan originally, but now she's been handed over to the Britannians, probably to Suzaku. So that's unfortunate, because, this is going to be a guy who's far more difficult to bargain with than the Chinese Federation, especially from the position they're currently in. And I guess if that weren't enough, the Emperor is getting involved now, as it pertains to Lord Jeremiah. And, it seems like those experiments they were running may or may not have been sanctioned. At least that's the impression I'm getting. That Jeremiah guy, like, we saw him a little bit at the end of R1, and then he was essentially sunk in the ocean. Like, he's clearly no worse for wear. But, like, the dude wasn't remarkably stable before everything went down, and he certainly doesn't seem much better now. It's interesting that they stated they're trying to reproduce C2's strange powers with him, but I don't know. Like, I think it's safe to say they haven't succeeded, and there will be consequences. And I guess speaking of consequences, there's the idea here that they're going to have to announce an annulment of the marriage. You know, that's something, I guess. You know, maybe Lelouch doesn't have the proper authority, I suppose. But, I don't know who else would really do it, you know? Now, it's interesting that idealism seems to be winning out. I guess maybe interesting isn't the right word, but like, you know, people are talking about Tianzi and political marriages versus marriages for love and all that. And it seems like love is winning out. You know, Lelouch doesn't seem willing to step all over what everyone else is saying. Ooh. Okay. So even Lelouch is conflicted. He's like, you know, I could get everyone to go along with me if I use my Geass, but like, I'm feeling conflicted. You know, even C2's, you know, unhappy about this. So I guess now we're checking in with Shirley. It's been a while since we've really seen anything substantial with her. And she does present an interesting case because with this whole sort of reset, essentially, with the Emperor Geassing everyone, like, she suddenly remembers Lelouch, and like that whole plot point about him wiping her memory, like that's kind of gone by the wayside. So the question is, where is her place in the plot going forward, you know? Because, like, she is effectively a love interest alongside Callan and C2 by my reckoning. So, compared to the others, she's had fairly insubstantial screen time. I'm wondering if something like that's going to change. I mean, she's having this conversation over the phone. It's like, you know, do you have someone you care about and all that? And, I mean, Lelouch might have an answer, but it's probably not the one she's hoping to hear. Although he's not really saying that, you know, he seems to be more leaning on her for advice. Alright, so there you go, you know. Lelouch has decided to be magnanimous. Tianzi can decide her future. Which, you know, that is probably the right thing to do. A political marriage would be nice and convenient in the short term, but I feel like compromising something like that, you know, there is a hidden cost. And, you know, it seems like it's already sort of bearing a little bit of fruit in that Jinki is like, okay, you know what, Zero? You're not so bad, despite everything you did, so... Alright, so I guess Shirley's wondering about Lelouch and how he seems to be someone else lately and all that. And, you know, she is sort of correct in a sense, because this Lelouch is someone in disguise. But I guess there's the issue of Lelouch and his secret identity is Zero and all that. Ooh. You know, I would think a girl wouldn't just drop her books for no reason, so that fake Lelouch. Whoa, buddy, I get the feeling the imposter took decisive action. Probably in such a way that's going to cause trouble for Lelouch down the line. Ooh. So that's interesting. Lelouch is researching the cult that's sort of involved with the Geass, and that, you know, I guess if he can study it thoroughly enough, he can sort of surpass the Emperor. And I guess it makes sense that that would be a big concern for him considering what's happened in the past. Alright. So it seems like this is all sort of pertaining to that island, you know? Because there was something distinctly cultish about it, I guess. It's interesting that Lelouch is sort of assigning C2 to studying this and digging up information. I mean, she's probably about as good as anyone, really, seeing as how she's likely to be the most involved. Oh, so here's the bad news, I imagine. Nothing urgent has changed while Lelouch was gone from Sayako's perspective, but, you know, she's probably not mentioning that little run-in with Shirley. You know, it's not like we know anything for certain, but I imagine there's going to be some kind of a fallout from it. Oh boy, here we go. You know, Shirley's looking awfully sullen, and, you know, just saying like, hey, did something happen? As if he wouldn't know. Okay, so now Anya's here as well in school. I guess all the knights of the round are being transferred. Oh dear. This is an unwelcome surprise. Wow, you know, what a likely cover story that they would want to experience being normal students, but, man. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.